A little Q&A panel so that we can answer some of the housing questions that have been coming in. We know at this time of year lots of people have already found their housing, and that's good. We hope you've found that a good process, but there's also lots of students that haven't found housing yet, have been waiting, seeing what's happened, and that's really sensible. So we've got some questions that have come in, and we've got a mixed panel here. So if we start by introducing, my name's Vix and I am the manager of the Guild Advice Service. Chloe, could you say hello to everyone?
Hi, I'm Chloe. I'm a fourth year postgraduate and I'm also a residence life mentor. So as part of the residence life team, we provide support to students who live on campus in any way, shape or form that may be. And we also have, we can have one-on-one meetings with students if they have any issues in residence. And as well, we also host different events. So recently we've had baking events, video games, and it's a great way to meet new people and get to know us.
Thank you, lovely. Katie, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a third year law student. I'm part of the student community team. So we liaise with students who live off campus in the city, and we provide a similar service. We just provide advice and information for those living in the city where they need it.
Lovely, thank you. And Lily?
Hi everyone, I'm Lily Margarelli and I'm president at the Students' Guild. So accommodation, residences, that falls into my remit. So I sit on meetings with the teams that sort of develop the residents at the university and also the teams that support students looking for accommodation in the city. And I also work very closely with Vix on making sure that we are doing all that we can to help students find housing and accommodation and do that safely and make sure that they're happy with what they've got.
Brilliant. So hopefully we've got some experience. I think mine will be slightly out of date from renting in the city, but I know the guys have lots of really current relevant experience of that. So I'm going to start off with the first question that I can see come in, and that is, we're a house of 6, but we're struggling to find anything. Has all the accommodation gone? So Katie, are you happy to kind of share your experience?
Yeah, I can do. So if you're looking for a house that's bigger than maybe 4, it can be more challenging to find bigger houses with bigger bedrooms and things like that. There are certain roads which do have bigger houses. So I know that Richmond Road often has 6 to 8 beds in there, and other houses on the other side of the campus. So along Vic Street, you can find some bigger houses there. If you really are struggling and you really can't find a 6, it may be worth thinking of splitting the house into 2. So I know several people who did this, started with a big group of like 8 and then were split into 2 floors, and then they'd find houses really close to each other on the same road. So they'd find a road with lots of student houses on, so they could still live near each other. But if you really are struggling, you can't find a house big enough, it can be worth splitting and then just trying to live close to each other instead.
Cool, thank you. We do find that there's enough accommodation in the city for everyone, but obviously if you're looking for those larger properties, there are just generally in across England less larger properties, and there's going to be more kind of 2, 3, 4 bed properties. So definitely be thinking, but things come up on the market all the time. Landlords sell on, and there are things that come up, but those closer ones that are bigger do go a bit quicker. The next one, Chloe, I know we've talked about this before. What's better, bills included or excluded?
I think that really depends on the group that is going into the house, as having bills included, sometimes it can be a better deal, but also sometimes it can really not be that good of a deal at all. But also then again, it can save hassle with organising bills and providers for certain bills. It also, however, a big plus for this means that then no singular person is responsible for bills. So there's no one chasing for money, and it leaves out those awkward conversations within the house. And it can often sometimes build for a better house dynamic. But I mean, finding your own, like going for bills excluded, that can also sometimes be good as well, because if you're a organised house and you can keep on top of these things, you can go out and get your own deals, and also it can build up your credit score having your names on these bills. But if you do, make sure that everyone is included on the same bill, otherwise it can put them at risk if certain members of the house don't pay. So it's all about liability at the end of the day, and one person doesn't want to be responsible for the entire house's bill.
Yeah, definitely. We tend to see houses more, the purpose-built student accommodation often have bills included. So that's your kind of big student blocks, and private houses maybe more often have bills excluded, but something to think about in the price. Lily, I mean, this is the big question. Where's the best places to live in Exeter?
That is a big question. I think that's really dependent on who you are, what you're looking for, and also, you know, what's available. I've lived on, you know, in a couple of different parts of Exeter and have enjoyed all of them. I think the things you want to kind of consider when you're looking at locations are sort of proximity to campus and proximity to town. So if you're someone that wants to spend a lot of time on campus, then it might be worth looking for somewhere that's a bit of a shorter walk. But if actually you only want to come into campus for your lectures, but you really enjoy the sort of sites of Exeter city centre, then you might want to put yourself a little bit closer to town. Also, another thing which I think is worth considering is how many student houses are around you. So although it can be really enticing to live in sort of big popular student areas, so sort of Pennsylvania Road, Vic Street come to mind, those do come with quite a lot of noise, because that is where lots of students live, and obviously quite a lot of students do like to have parties, and walking back from late nights out can get quite loud, and I know that for a lot of students that's not really what they want. So maybe considering whether you'd be happy to be kept up into the evening, or whether you'd rather live just outside of those areas, still close enough to get involved in the fun, but with a bit of a quieter night. So I think that's an important thing to consider. But what I would say is that I lived in a student area that was quite not where a lot of students were, and when I was first going there after first year, a lot of people said, oh gosh, you know, that's not really a big student area, like, are you going to be okay living there? You know, we had a house of 6, so that was fine, but outside of that, what are you going to do, who are you going to hang out with? And actually it didn't make the slightest bit of difference at all. We were only 10-15 minute walk from other people's houses, you know, 20 minutes walk to campus, so although it wasn't a big student area, it was still absolutely fine. So Exeter's not huge. I think you'll be fine wherever you are.
Cool, thank you. Katie and Chloe, any do you want to disagree at all with Lily on the best place to live in Exeter? Are you biased to your streets?
I completely agree. I think Exeter, there's so many different types of places to live, and it really depends on how, like, it all depends on the person. But I think, you know, Exeter's quite well connected with transport. Like, even if you were to live a bit further outside of Exeter, the trains are very well connected. And yeah, it really depends on the person.
Cool, thank you. While you're there, Chloe, I've got this one, and I've had this one in a variety of ways, but this person has said, I've not got people to live with, and I don't know who I'm going to live with next year. I guess that's a feeling lots of people might feel, is that they sort of haven't found the people yet, and are they thinking, oh, I'm the only one like that? Any advice there?
Firstly, I'd start off with saying that feeling is completely normal. Not everyone's student experience is the same, and you know, it's completely normal to have those feelings. And because the student market here is so rushed with housing, it sometimes feels like you know someone for even a week, and then it's like, okay, let's get a house together. Like, it's outside of this uni bubble, that would be crazy, but here it's somewhat normalized. But I'd say there's plenty of different options you can go for. Like, people are often advertising on different Facebook groups for for another housemate to join them. And of course, I'd say with that, always meet up in a public place. You know, go through those standard like vetting procedures, because you don't know who you're going to meet. And as well, there is the student built purpose. I can't say it, but the purpose-built student accommodation, there we go. And with those, you can So I did it a few years ago because I was in a similar position, and you can just sign on to a contract there, and then you'll be put in with a flat. So sometimes it will be those two people have decided to live together and you'll be with them, and then other people that have also signed on individually. So it shouldn't be too much of a worry considering that.
Cool, thank you. So let's say you found your people and you've moved in. I think, Katie, your community team will deal with this more, is what happens if you fall out with your flatmates while you're living with them, and you deal with things like that, I imagine.
Yeah, it does happen. People will see, like you said, they move in together quite quickly. That rush to find a house, you end up living with people you may not know particularly well. I think the most important thing is just to remember that you're all adults. So you're always going to get a little bit annoyed, just tiny things of washing up and mess and things like that. But trying to be mature about those little disagreements is always really important. If you have like massive falling outs, and you just think, I can't really do it anymore, the community team are there if you ever need to organise just a conversation with someone. But just trying to sort it out amongst yourselves is really important, and you can take drastic steps and, you know, find other people to live with and things like that, but I think it's better to try and work through it. And you will always make friends outside your house, you know, there's no need to feel trapped with your housemates, you know, they're not the be all and end all. If you are not best friends, that doesn't matter, but as long as you can find ways to get along and get together, that's really important.
Yeah, that's great. I would add a tip in there is sometimes we see students using WhatsApp groups to talk a lot about house things, and sometimes that doesn't always land very well, and it can come across a bit maybe passive aggressive, or people don't mean it in the tone, and then it can get a bit frosty through that. So where possible, we'd be always saying to people, just set your expectations out and talk to people. So it's good to try and in the beginning find people that you're going to live with, that you're going to get on with, and you've got similar values. I think there's a great resource which is a bit of fun but also gets you talking, which is Who Am I Going to Live With, and it sort of asks you where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 on how quickly you should do the washing up after you've eaten, for example, and lots of things like that. But it's always good to have those conversations before you move in, so that you don't then kind of go, oh gosh, this person wants to party every night, but I only want to party on a Wednesday night. But I obviously don't want to party at all. So that's who I'm looking for. Lily, this might be something that comes under you, is our house for next year is really nice, but it's a bit over budget and I'm worried about money for next year. What can I do?
So I think if it's something that you've already sort of signed on to, so that's your house, and now you're looking for how you can earn a bit of money on the side, there are lots of sort of part-time employment opportunities, both with the university but also in the local area, and Career Zone is probably the best place to go to for that. So they, on the website, but also if you wanted to speak with a career advisor, they'd be able to link you up with all of the internal job opportunities that there are at the uni, and there are quite a few, and those are generally really flexible to fit around your degrees, and also the places in town where you can work to get a bit of extra cash to so that you can meet that budget. I would say that if you haven't yet signed that house, then having an open and honest conversation with the housemates that you're going to live with about budget is really important. It can feel a bit awkward, but you know, everyone's got to pay the bills one way or another, so it's not going to come as a surprise to other people that you need to talk about money. It might be that other people in the house are also having the same concerns, and then you can, you know, look at a different house. but also in the case for my house that I lived in second year, there was a room that no one wanted particularly, and one of the people that we were living with was a bit tighter on budget, so we all agreed amongst ourselves that the person who had a tight budget and they were completely happy with it would take the room that no one really wanted and would therefore pay a bit less, and that kind of worked out for all of us. So I think there are some kind of creative ways to get around those problems, but being open about it I think is a really important first step.
Cool, thank you. We also understand that when we're looking at the maintenance loan, that often isn't enough to cover all your living costs and your rent, let alone your rent. And particularly if you're not getting much, but your parents aren't able to contribute, student finance just presumes they can, but we know for loads of our students that's just not the case. So sometimes perhaps if there were limited options and you had to sign into something, you're working, so you're trying to do a bit, but obviously you don't want to work too much to impact your studies, is sometimes students might be able to apply to the Success for All Fund, which is a fund run by the university. You have to kind of provide examples and information so that they can understand your situation, but that might be an option for you to go from there. Okay, I guess Katie and Chloe, this might be one for you guys in private accommodation, is I've heard all student accommodation is mouldy and full of rats. Is this true?
It's not true. If you find you're living in a house or you look at a house like that, maybe don't pick that one. I mean, student accommodation is never going to be amazing, but it's always worth, having a talk with the landlord or the property manager when you're having a look around and things like that, just to check on issues like that. It can also be worth asking the current tenants. So if you ask whoever's you're talking to, the landlord or whoever the property manager, you can often ask and they might provide you with an email address, and you can email current tenants and be like, is there any current issues with mold or anything like that that we want to be aware of? People are normally quite friendly and will happily answer your questions about things like that. And if you do move into a house where you do have problems like that, obviously contacting your landlord and things is the first good idea. But the community team can offer help if your landlord isn't responding or they just won't help or anything. We can offer support with things like that. But it's a good idea to look into those problems before you sign onto a house. Things like asking the current tenants and things like that is always a good one to look into before you go ahead and move in.
Chloe, have you got anything additional there?
I just piggyback really saying that it is so important to, when you go on a house viewing, for example, see if there are any current tenants there, just to have a chat and say about how the house is and if there is any issues, of course, and also if there's been any issues resolving the issues, because that can sometimes be a bit more difficult for students to overcome that.
Cool. A lot of our work in the advice service is supporting students who are having problems with their tenancies. So, for example, we'll deal with students who've got problems with damp, and what we're always advising is to contact the council, who the environmental health team will come out, will look at the property, and they'll be able to tell whether the fault perhaps is with the student, perhaps a room needs to be aired more often or something like that. But actually what we want to see is when there's a problem with the property, and then the landlord will be given a notice to improve. So usually this can be in about, let's give the landlord 3 months. There's mold, rising damp here, they need to resolve that. And they're going to be asking the landlord to do that within a certain time. The same can be true for issues around rats. You want to look at where's the fault. Is it something to do with the structure of the building that's letting it in, and therefore the landlord needs to look at it? Or is it something about the behaviour of the tenants? So that could be leaving bins out and food out all the time, and things like that. So the advice service as well, you're welcome to come and speak to us and we'll support with that. To go from there. I think, Chloe, it was interesting you've linked into the next one talking about viewing. Could I get a top tip for viewing properties from everyone? Chloe, what's yours?
I'd say definitely check everything you can possibly think of. Maybe make a checklist beforehand and see what exactly is going on with the property. And even like just as you move in, take pictures of exactly what state the house is currently in, as that can really help down the line if issues do come up.
Thank you. Katie?
Yeah, I think basically what Chloe said is having a list of everything you want to know, everything that you think is important. One that's quite a useful one is that if you're looking to a house where the bills aren't included, if the current tenants are around, it's often quite good to ask how much their bills are, so you can start factoring in that for your budget and things for next year, start getting an idea of costs.
Cool. Lily?
I've got two because I couldn't pick one. So the first one would be if you're a first year, either try and have a conversation with a friend of some sort who's lived in housing outside of like student built accommodation within the university, just so you have a bit of more of an idea of what to look for and what you're getting into. If they can come along with you, then that's great as well. Having like another perspective is always really useful. And then the second one would be, if you're living in a house with multiple people, try and get as many people as possible to look round. I think that's where a few sort of arguments and disagreements can come from, if one person's looked round and then someone else is putting a lot of responsibility on them to have checked everything, and then it becomes a bit of a blame game. So yeah, if everyone can look around the house, then that's going to be really beneficial.
Interestingly, this year I know of an agents that are saying, oh, you can only look around in person, because lots of them are doing them online. Only look around in person once you've paid your deposit. It's not something we are overly keen on, and we do think, like you guys say, it's really important to look around and see the property, perhaps go in the evening so that you can see it in a different time. But lots of providers will have virtual viewings, and that's particularly true for purpose-built student accommodation, studio flats and things like that. And for our international students, that's often the way they're viewing properties, is through a virtual tour online. I don't know if anyone particularly wants to take this one, so I'll open it up. Is that my parents are not happy being a guarantor, as they think they'll be liable for the whole house. What do I do about this? I can answer this if anyone else has got. So most landlords nowadays will look for a guarantor behind the student, and the guarantor is usually a UK-based guarantor that says, I will pay for this student, I'm going to have the backing here, the financial backing. Most private houses are let as joint tenancies, which means you're all liable for the property, you're all liable for the rent, you're all liable for the damage. So therefore, the guarantor agreement is often going to look like your guarantor is for the whole property. The guarantor agreement can be worded so that the guarantor is just guarantoring the individual's rent. So I certainly would ask for that if that's possible. It's not always possible that the guarantor will only be able to guarantor for the damage that individual has caused. An initial way is obviously you'll have your damage deposit, which hopefully that should be, but it's also to take care that the property is being kept really well and nice. But unfortunately, most landlords are looking for a guarantor, a UK-based guarantor. I think, oh, we've got one. Any recommendations for studio accommodation?
I think generally speaking, the studio accommodation will be with the sort of purpose-built providers. So looking at those ones will probably be the best place to start, at least, and then going from there. I think with studios, they tend to be booked out a little bit later than maybe say like a 6-bed student house, so there can be a little bit more leeway and flexibility with when you actually confirm that accommodation for the year ahead. But obviously for that, the ability to do that kind of comes with a bit of a price, which often is above what you might pay in a shared house or a shared flat.
Yeah, we do tend to see them more expensive, and you get a variety. So if you're looking for an on-site gym, an on-site cinema room, laundry, sometimes you're paying more for those. But it can be an option. When we go back to the first question about a group of 6, is if you couldn't find a house, you might then later have more luck finding like a floor on or a flat from there. Okay, so I think that's all of our questions that have come in, and this is just a short chat. You can contact the advice team, you can contact Res Life and the community wardens team if you've got other questions, and there's loads of resources on the websites, and we'll put links to Move Smart Housing Campaign and the housing resources for advice. Could I ask for a housing top tip from everyone before to end this? Lily, what would be yours?
My housing top tip is to treat yourself and spend a bit of money on some nice things for your room. It doesn't need to be anything extravagant, but that's your room, no matter what's happening in the rest of the house. If it's a mess, if people are loud, if you're having disagreements or whatever, hopefully none of that's happening, but if it does, you've got your little sanctuary. So put some time and effort into making that really feel like home in your space and really nice.
Thank you. Katie?
I think mine's probably to sort of make time for your housemates, kind of opposite, but similar ideas that making time just every now and again, have a meal or just sit at the table and have a chat and stuff. Just, you know, keep connected to your housemates so you don't all feel a bit estranged from each other, and, you know, keep talking and keep friendly with each other. And that's how to sort of prevent those little arguments and little irritations building up.
Thank you. Chloe?
Yeah, I'd say that communication is key when living in a student house, and like you mentioned before with WhatsApp groups and things, it can be so easily misconstrued what you're trying to say. So even something as simple as having like a house meeting can really, and having those like regularly, like every term or so, can really help aid that communication so everyone's on the same page.
Cool, thank you. I would be saying that we've answered it already, but really don't panic if you haven't found your accommodation already. There'll be events, flatmate finder events coming up, and it's always better to take your time than rush into something, and, you know, make sure that your housing can be happy and you're living with the right people for you. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you for answering the question, guys.